Today we're going to be looking at a different aspect. Rather than them giving us a percent and the number and we figure out what the percent of that number is, today we're going to be doing some problems where we're finding what the percent is. When we do these problems, something to keep in mind, when you see the word of is going to mean multiply, and the word is means equals. There's different ways to do this problems, but the way we're going to try to look at doing these is to write an equation based off the information they're giving us. So if you look at example 3, the question is what percent of 92 is 11 5/10? So what we're doing is we're directly translating this into an equation. So what percent, that's what we're trying to find. They did P for percent. And then of means multiply. 92 means 92. Is means equals. And 11.5. So we're just directly translating that question into an equation. Once we translated it into an equation, the book rearranges it. You don't have to rearrange it like they did. Basically, our goal is getting that variable by itself. So like we've talked about before, when you're solving an equation, trying to get the variable by itself, we're going to do the opposite operation. So you can see on the left side of the equation, the P is being multiplied by 92. To get rid of that, we're going to have to divide by 92. So you can see that the book did that. They divided by 92 on both sides of the equation, and they got 125 thousandths. Well, 125 thousandths is our percent as a decimal, and then we just need to move our decimal 2 places to the right and get what our percent is, which would be 12.5%. Once you get an answer, it's a good idea to think about what it is that we're saying here. So basically, if you go back to the question, instead of what percent, we can put our answer there and see if that makes sense or not. So instead of what percent, now we're saying 12.5% of 92 is 11.5. Well, 12.5%, that's like an eighth of it actually. A fourth is 25%. Half of that would be exactly 12.5%. So we're saying 1/8 or 12.5% of 92 is 11.5. 12.5% is a pretty small percentage, so that seems reasonable to me, getting that answer. Again, kind of use a benchmark of the halfway mark. You know, like 50%, half of 92 would be 46. This is obviously going to be way less than that because way less than 50% because we've got way less number than 46 with the 11.5 there. So if we look at the try it, asks what percent of 120 is 72. And again, we're just going to translate that into an equation. So we see what percent. So if you want to just do P for percent, you can pick any letter you want to really. The P just kind of helps us remember that our answer is going to be a percent, and actually we're going to have to move our decimal at the end. So we said of means multiply, okay? And then 120 is going to come down. And then is means equals, and then 72. And I'm going to do just a slight difference than the book here. I'm going to go ahead and just right away be ready to solve this right now. So this is my equation. We're trying to get the variable P in this case. We're trying to get that by itself. So if we look on the side of the equation, what's over there with the variable? Jocelyn? 120, good. So the 120 is over there, and you can see since those are right next to each other, those are being multiplied. If those are being multiplied, to get rid of that, we're going to need to divide it. Okay? So what we're going to do, I'll use a different color so we can distinguish what we're doing on our second step here. We're going to divide both sides of the equation by 120. When you do that, 120 divided by 120 is 1. So that's like 1p. That's the same as just p. So we can actually cancel those out like we've done before. And then the 72 divided by 120, that's going to give us our decimal, and then we'll have to change that to a percent. So what does that come out as a decimal? Okay? So that's our decimal of our percent. And then now we're just going to need to move our decimal over 2 places and add a 0. So that tells us our percent would be 60%. Okay? Now again, once we get that answer, we can think about if that makes sense or not. Instead of what percent, basically now we're saying 60% of 120 is 72. Well, I know 50% of 120 would be 60. So 60% is going to be more than that. So that sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty reasonable. You could also actually just check that, especially if you had a calculator, it'd be a quick check for you. Just like we did earlier in the lesson, take 60% of 120. If you work that out, change 60% to a decimal, multiply by 120, and you'll get 72. That's a way that we know that our answer is correct. So look on page 364, do you know how? And let's go to number 8. They're asking us to find the percent. So number 8, what percent of 315 is 126? Again, we can create that equation that we talked about, and then we can solve that and figure out what the percent is. So for this equation, we've got what percent. So we can do P for percent here. Of means multiply by 315. Is means equals 126. And again, we're trying to get our variable, that letter by itself. So they're multiplying. We do the opposite. We divide. We divide by 315. Gets those to cancel out. When you divide, that's going to be a decimal. That'll be 4/10. And then we just need to move our decimal 2 places to the right. Add a 0, which would be 40%. So what we're saying then is 40% of 315 is 126. And again, you could check that, work it out. 40% times 315, and you should get 126. Look at number 9, same idea. We've got what percent is what we're trying to find, so you can do P. Of means multiplying by 120. Is means equals 28 8/10. And we're trying to get that variable by itself again. Once again, they are going to be multiplying here by 120, means we need to divide by 120. When you do that, you should get a decimal, 24 hundredths. Move your decimal over 2 places, and that means that would be 24%. So 24% of 120 is 28 8/10, and if you work that out, you'll see that that is correct.